This. All right, so today, I'm going to recap that because I forgot to hit record again. So much like we did yesterday, we're going to go through a few things about how to download files from our vendors so that you can assemble stuff. And then we're going to switch over to how to draw some basic parts on top of those other parts so you can get all the holes and stuff to align. And then I'll also remember to show you where you can find more details on how all of this works in the Learning Center, the online Learning Center. So that's sort of our goal today, is for you to be able to download parts from any of the websites and make it work properly, because sometimes they don't work properly. And then be able to make a little library for yourself, or for something that you can share with your other teammates. And then we're going to maybe we'll make a I just disassembled this camera, and maybe we'll make a mount for this camera to 3D print. Sound good?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So let me turn on my screen sharing. And we will turn on that screen. And I will put us over there. Okay, so I'm going to erase what I did yesterday. There we go. So so we've got this document, and I know that some of you, or a lot of you, actually have stuff from last week.
Yep.
What we're going to focus on today is, let's say, and I'm just going to choose GoBuilda. We might go grab a part from another website. So so if I go to gobuilda.com and I know that I'm going to use some certain parts, a lot of times you can go and find these step files for things. For example, all of the channel that you would normally build the robot base out of, this sort of stuff. We use a lot of that. So we're going to go grab a piece of channel, and there is here's the U-shaped channel, and let's pick one. Let's use a 9-hole one, and they have models for each of the sizes that they normally sell. So I'm just going to grab a 9-hole one here, and it has all of the details. It has the grid pattern. It has all sorts of nice measurements. So this is really handy stuff. You can find out a lot of technical details. You can also, GoBuilda does a really great job of showing you examples of how you might consider putting things together to make things a little stronger, how to interface with various parts. So there's a lot of good tech details here. So I just point that out because a lot of people ignore some of this stuff and don't really realize there was tips on how to use this stuff. But the cool thing is they usually have a download section, and they have a thing called a step file. And step file is a very old format for CAD systems to share data files, to share models. And so I'm going to click on the step file, and that will download it. And GoBuilda actually downloads zip files. So if you just extract them immediately, that's usually what I do.
Okay.
And it is not extracting. I don't know why. It's all good. Oh, I have something running in the background that's kind of big. There we go. That should do it. All right. So I want to extract this guy, and no clue why it's not working. It's all good. Oh, it's brought up a dialogue somewhere that I can't see. Oh, it's under you guys. It appeared under your gallery there. All right. So there you can see there's the step file. So your mileage may vary on where things are. Mine all go in the downloads directory. So we've got this step file, and to bring it in to Onshape, I come down here to the plus sign down and do an insert new element and an import, and I will go find that part number. And it is going to be this guy. You didn't realize that I remembered what the part number was, but I was looking for this. So it's all good. So when you so we've downloaded the step file from the website, and I'm going to import it up into Onshape. And it gives you this dialog box when you go to import a part into Onshape, and it's trying to give you some hints about what it's going to do. The one on the left here where it says import into this document, it's going to create a part studio, and then it's going to create an assembly of that part studio. And there are times that you would like to do this, but most often I find, especially when you're doing simple parts, you want to just combine everything into a single part studio. Yeah, it seems like a good idea. In fact, I think unless you know something or unless you determine that this didn't work out for you, I think I would always go with that right-hand selection when you're doing an import. You also have, did that make sense to you?
Yeah, I don't see like an insert. Like I see the insert, but I don't see a place to add the actual document once I.
Okay, so watch how I do it. So here's my empty guy. So I've come down to the plus and see where it says import down in the bottom left. So we're doing an import rather than an insert.
Right. Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to do an import. And again, we had downloaded that file, and this is in my downloads directory. And so there it is. That's the file I downloaded. And then I'm going to do an open. And you should end up with this. Do you got something like that? All right. So I would generally, by default, go with combined into a single part studio. Okay. All right.
So just one question here. Is there a distinction if you plan to make let's say this was not a single part, it was a combination of two parts. Then depending on whether you plan to customize it, should you pick one or the other? Or
I would still actually, unless it's a really complicated assembly in a step file, and sometimes it is possible to download them. They've got like 30 different parts and they're all assembled in some way. You can import one of those documents, and there is where you might want to do the one on the left. The thing is that when you import it, none of the relationships come across. So you'll end up with this big pile of stuff. Now, there are times that you want to use the one on the left, but I think at this level that we're operating at, I'd go with the one on the right. There are reasons to do the one on the left.
So even if it's an entire chassis, a single step file for an entire chassis, you still should really use the one on the right.
You might think about it. Yeah. I think I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So there's another checkbox down here about create composite part when importing multiple or non-solid bodies. What the heck does that mean? That's a lot of words. Create a composite part. What that means is that if there are multiple things, like say you had a gear and a set screw, most CAD programs would treat the gear as one thing and the set screw as another thing. And that's called a multiple bodies. And so that's a great reason that you might think about doing a composite part. And non-solid bodies we'll talk about some other day. You could check this here, and I'm going to leave it unchecked. Okay. So, and now I'm going to hit OK, and you'll see that it's now uploading that step file from my computer up to Onshape, and then Onshape is going to do something called translate, and that's what it's importing it right now, and it has to translate it, which means yep, there it goes. So it translated it, and now if you look in my file down here, there's a new tab. And that icon tells me that it's a part studio. So it created a new part studio from the imported part. And I'm going to click on it. And this is a 9-hole from Go Builder. They count these holes along here. That's a 9-hole part. And so this is a simple part. And we're going to do a complicated part here in just a sec. This is a simple part that imported just fine, because it just had one body. Okay. Now, something that you'll want to do right away when you import something is, well, it used the file name that you uploaded as the name of the part studio, and it also grabbed a part name. The part names are actually inside that step file, and so this is the part number, and that's actually that is the go build a part number for this. So that's cool. So if I click on this, it'll highlight the whole part. And what I want to do right now is I'm going to highlight this, or I've highlighted it, and I'm going to do an assign material. And what that does is it allows me to tell Onshape what this thing is made out of. Yes.
Kevin, I have a question. Sorry. So it says that zip file was not translated. Translation is not supported for step, and in brackets .stp files.
Really?
Yes,
Okay. Hey, that's cool. So, one of the reasons for this session is to see things. Do you mind sharing your screen?
Yeah, no problem. Let me do that. And do I? Yeah, I guess I can just start sharing, correct?
Yeah, you can just share.
Yeah, just like. Yep. So do you see? Do you see my? I want to make sure I'm sharing the correct screen. Do you see the one with Onshape?
I see the one with Onshape.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, there's
yeah.
Next to App Store, if you go straight up, there's a little notification bell thing. If you click on that, it'll show us that message. It's over.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So a zip file, we actually have to upload the step file, not the zip file.
All right. I missed that part. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So you'll need to extract it. That's okay. This is one of those errors that shows up.
I'll stop sharing.
Okay. And I will go back to sharing my screen. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is on this part, I'm going to right click it, and you can see you can rename it. You can set properties. Probably don't need you can play with that later. There's a whole bunch of properties you could fill in, but we can do an assign material, and it has a list of materials that we could choose, and we are going to use 6061 aluminum, and that's a very, very common form of aluminum, and that's actually what this part is made of. I asked, so we're going to do that, okay, and then when I'm done, I hit the green check mark, and what it did is it actually assigned that material, and it knows the mass of that material. So if I'm going to come all the way over here to the right-hand side in the lower right-hand corner, and you can see this little scale thing says display mass properties. So I'm going to click that, and you can see that I have selected that part. If it comes up with nothing like this, and it may ask you for parts to measure, and then you can actually go select all the part you want to measure. And it's telling us how much that part weighs. I currently have it in inches and pounds, and the volume and stuff. And the other interesting thing is it shows you the center of mass based on it can calculate the center of mass, okay? And if I come over here and I click my click the right mouse button, I can rotate around. You can see this ball right here. That is the center of mass of this thing. So that is the by weight, that is dead center by mass. So that can be super handy to use, especially when you get a complicated assembly and you're wondering, is this thing going to balance or not? And I'll demonstrate that here in just a couple of minutes. So anyway, so that's good. And what I kind of also want to do is I can come over, right click this guy and do edit appearance. And my team has picked this color right here. It's under the palette. We've picked this light gray, and it's pound sign number, color number is A5, A5, A5. And that's aluminum for us. Okay. If you have no other reason I would let's just go with that. Okay. So now what I've got is I have a part that's made out of aluminum, and it is, I know where its center of mass is, and so I'm happy. Okay. So that is straightforward how to import a part. How'd it go? Araf, did it work?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, Rahan, how are you?
Yeah, hi, I'm good. Yeah, it worked for me too.
It worked for you too? All right. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So now I've got this part, and it's in a part studio, and I can actually go to an assembly tab. So we're going to pop over to assembly tab here. Okay. And if I come up here up to the top and find insert, it's up under your file name. If you click on insert, in the current document, you'll find that part is now importable. Okay. That 1100.09. And so if I click it a couple of times, I just inserted 2 of them. So I'm going to do that and hit the green check mark. So I've got 2 of them. So I should be able to grab one of them and drag it over. Okay. So there you go. I've now managed to insert those 2. Now, what I wanted to show you is if I now go over to the mass, display mass properties down in the lower right-hand corner and click on that, and I can go and click on the entire assembly. So I've done that. Some things to notice. It's told me that the entire assembly, all of the parts that it knows information about, 0.78 pound or 0.7 pounds. Okay. And you can see that the center of mass has now moved, because if as an assembly, the center of mass is right there at that ball, right? So very cool. How are we doing? So I assume this was straightforward and everybody's with me.
Kevin, I think one thing I missed was how you set the aluminum 6061 property.
Absolutely. So go back to the part. So, and the reason that you did this in the part factory as soon as you imported it is if you end up using this again, you want those changes to be out there. So what you do is you go left click on the part,
okay,
in the features window, and then right click. So you've highlighted it, right click it, and do edit material.
So I am seeing edit appearance, assign material. Oh, I guess assign material.
Assign material.
Okay. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Mine said edit, didn't it?
I think that since you already had it assigned, it probably gave you the
Very
option.
cool. All right. And then you can, ways to find things are, you can click in this box and you can actually search for it. So I usually just search for 6061. That comes up with aluminum. When I'm 3D printing something, I might type in nylon, because we use nylon filament. You can also, type in steel. And it has all of the different steels. They're really close in weight. So, but you can also do stainless, which has got a little bit different. So anyway, you can try to do your best to use the material that you think is there. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So let's go back to GoBuilda. And let's go all the way up to the home page. And let's go with motion. And what we're going to do is we're going to go find a mecanum wheel. So under wheels and tires, they have these lovely mecanum wheels. How are we doing? Has everybody found the mecanum wheels?
I'm almost there.
I found them.
Are we good? All right. And then I'm going to click on the mecanum wheels, and I'm going to scroll down. And once again, I can find the a step file for the mecanum wheels. So if I click on this, I'm going to download it. Okay. And there's the step file. Now I need to extract it. Do an extract all. And this little window is popping up on Windows. So I'm just going to do an extract. There we go. And it isn't showing me the size. That's weird. All right. Whatever. Oh, if I open this, oh, there we go. So there are, so now things get a little more complicated. Step files actually have a left and a right wheel. I don't know if you knew that or not. The wheels are, there's left-hand wheels and right-hand wheels, and that's what you're seeing here is they have, I think we'll call that the left wheel, and that's the right wheel. Joined, I'm not exactly sure what, I've never actually uploaded this model. I should have tried this before. So we're going to give it a go together. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import I'm going to import the first one. So I'm going to go back. Now I'm headed back to Onshape here, and I'm going to do an import. And I'm going to go to my downloads directory, and the part number is a 360. It's the 360. This guy. Back up. Hang on a sec. Got to do that again. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. Import. I want to click on the unzipped version of it. Here's the unzipped version. Okay. And I want to go into this folder, and I want to grab one of these step files. Okay. I'm going to grab the first one, and we'll see how it says assembly.step. So I'm going to do that, and I will do an open. And now this is, so it's an assembly. The least messy thing I can do is to take that assembly, because it wouldn't be considered a huge assembly, and do a single part studio with it. And so that's what I'm going to do. And if it turns out that doesn't work well, it turns out that getting rid of a single part studio way easier than cleaning up after an import of a big document. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to upload a 12 megabyte file. And this is exciting. I really honestly have no idea what I'm going to find in here. So and then it's going to take a bit to import, and when it's done, it'll show up in a tab down here. And the bigger the thing, the longer the import takes. It can take up to a minute sometimes. Sometimes super fast. If it has a lot of little bits and pieces, it takes, there we go. So here is, so the assembly is now done. So I can, well, I'm going to delete all my notifications. I don't need those anymore. And now I can open up the assembly file.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an assembly. And you can see that it has a ton of parts. Look at all the parts that got imported. All right. So it imported 253 different parts. For the thing with this is all of those parts are sitting there, but they're not actually assembled. So if I go to my assembly and I say I would like to insert that wheel, it says assembly, but it really isn't one. It turns out that it's going to insert all of these individual parts, which may or may not be what I want to do. So I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to take this, I'm going to insert it, and there it is, there's a wheel. Okay. Problem is that my guess is that nothing is actually assembled, right? So all of this stuff comes to bits. So it doesn't really make a great library part. You can use this, and here's what you would do with it. I'm going to put those back. I could use this by highlighting all of this stuff. I didn't want all of that. I wanted all of this. There we go. And I can do a thing called a group. See up there on the bar up there? That is a group. And if I group them, and then it allowed me to pick all my stuff, and I just the green check mark. Now these things can be drug around as a unit, and I can use it as a unit. Okay, so I can make that work. I'm going to undo that, In fact, I'm going to undo the insert as well, I think. There we go. Let's go back to, I'm now going to go back to the Part Studio for that thing. And I'm going to look up here and you can see it where it says import. If I right click that and I edit it, I could import it as a composite part. And if I do that, it'll take it a sec here. It needs to think about it. Thinking about it for quite a while. So what a composite part is it takes all of those multi-body things and it creates a single composite part. And so that is a single composite part. Everything will hold its relationship to the unit. Nothing moves. None of this stuff can be turned or anything, but that, that's okay. It's a representation of it. And if I look under the parts list, I'll only see one. You can see it is a composite of that. Okay. Now, if I go to my assembly and I do an insert in my current document, you'll see that it isn't showing up. The reason it isn't showing up is this little button right here. I don't know why they did this. I've complained about it. They claim they're going to fix it. If you click on this, you'll find all of the composite parts as well. So if you can't find what you just did, look there. But you can see now you're inserting just a wheel. Okay, so there we go. So we just inserted the 00 wheel. How am I doing? Has everybody kind of got that? We good?
Yeah.
All right. And if you want, you can go back to this thing and you can turn off the composite by doing an edit on the import like that. You'll end up with the 253 parts again. We'll give it a sec. Okay, there you go. And now if I go to the assembly, this guy is now failing because it can't find your composite part. It went away. So you would have to reinsert that guy. So just saying, if you do undo your composite in the other thing, you may have to go fix up what you did to insert it. I think if I come back over here and turn composite back on, let's see if it fixes it. I think it will. All right. Any questions about this so far? And you can see that the composite part is back. And you can see the 3 blocks. That means a composite part. A single block is a single part, and a cube with a thing is an assembly. So those little icons can give you a little indication what those are. All right. Hey, we're going to go and do another import. So insert new element, import. This time I'm going to do I'm dying to know what this is. But no, we're going to do this one first. Okay, so I'm going to do the same directory, the 100 instead of the 00 one. This time I'm going to do an import this document, because why not? Let's see what it does. Okay, because we know it's a multi-part thing. And if I had to guess, I'm going to guess it's going to make is probably going to make a part studio with all of the parts in it. Is probably then going to make an assembly. And I'm not sure whether it's, I don't think there were any sub-assemblies. I guess we're going to find out. And then I'll show you how to clean that up if that isn't what we wanted to do. All right. Okay, yeah, so this is what happens when you take a part like that and import it as a document. Look what happened. Look at all of the tabs I now have down there. Each one of those is a sub-assembly, because that's what it was in the file. So if I go open this, I've got a roller. Look at all of the parts that are associated with this, just with the one roller, right? And so it's got the clips, it's got everything is there, okay? And you can see that I now have a lot of tabs from that one part. That is why, unless you know that you want to do this, I don't recommend using that version of import, because you end up with a lot of stuff. And honestly, it's kind of a pain in the ass to go clean it up. What I can do is I can click on the tab manager and you can see all of these, all of this stuff. So I know that I want to get rid of all of the assemblies. So I'm just going to come in here and highlight all of those and just delete them. Do that. Yeah, delete. There we go. And I think I probably am going to need to delete this too, because it's okay. That's how you have to go back to undo that full-fledged import. So Cherie, do you now see why I said use the one on the right?
Understood. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So cool. Now I'm going to import, because I'm dying to know. I'm going to import the joined one. I haven't seen this before, so I'm going to import the joined one, and we'll see what it does. And again, this time I'm going to do a combined to single part, because this one can potentially make a mess, and I would just import it all. And oh, this file size is twice as big. Yay. So we'll let that cook for a minute. All right, students, how am I doing? Questions? Following along? Life's good? All right. So we're looking for 101 to show up down here. Show up right here. It turns out if you look in the CADS import directory,
okay,
it will show you everything that you've imported into this file over time. And it's actually the step files are here. So if you screw one up or delete something and you don't want to have to re-upload it, there's one in here. So I think you can re-import those from there. All right. So here it goes. It should finish in just a sec. How you doing, Brian? Good to see you.
Doing well, thank you.
Okay, well, that's taking a lot longer than I thought. So I'm thinking about coming back to this. So hey, while that's going on, so I've got this window open. This is my Onshape directory. Here's a new trick for you. If you actually hold down the control key and click on this Onshape thing where it says go to documents, if you do control that, it will bring up a new browser window and open your documents file.
Okay.
So while this is importing, I'm going to head over to my documents file, and you should do the same. Go ahead and try that. And then you click on Teams and then click on OSK. Rohan, are you part of you were here last week?
No.
You weren't?
No.
Are you part of OSK?
I don't think so.
Okay. Hey, do me a favor. You obviously have an Onshape account, right?
Yeah.
Will you, in the chat window, would you put the email address that you used for Onshape in the chat window?
Yeah.
Kevin, were you trying to send that to first at PTC to get the parts library added?
Oh, no, you can do that. Let me talk about that in just a sec.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to add Rohan to OSK, which is our Onshape with Kevin thing. I'm just going to add you really quick, Rohan. There we go. Sweet. So now if you go back to your Onshape You might need to hit refresh, but under Teams, you should find OSK.
So Kevin, do I need
Yeah.
that too? Let me.
Oh, do you not? You don't have that either?
No.
All right. In the chat window, go ahead and put the email address for your account, and I will add you to there. I think Brian is already here. Yeah, Brian's already here, and I believe Arav is. Yeah, he's here, and sweet. All right, there we go. I can do that. Boink. All right. So now we should all find OSK under Teams. So go into OSK and do a create document, and you can just call it, mine will be called Kevin Lib. Go and you use your name and call it lib. Okay, and it'll bring up an empty document. Brian did this yesterday, so his is already there. All right, and then if we should be done. I just got a new notification, so that means that this is probably done. There we go. So we're going to use that lib file in just a sec. So I've hopped back into where we were importing stuff, and I found the new file. So there it is. So this is the joined one, and again, it is imported, but it's complaining. It didn't like this part, whatever that is. Okay.
Is it, sorry, Kevin, how's it complaining? Is it, I can't tell. Is it red? Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is red. And if you hover over it, it says did not regenerate properly. It contains imported parts contain faults. And actually it would have told me that in the notification window with errors. Sometimes you can fix these, sometimes you can't. So then I roll down in the parts and had 41 parts. And I see this guy is bitchy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to this gets unusual. I would probably go back and upload the other part, because that would be my first thing to do, because it's got faulty topology, which means that the model for that bit of the thing had issues, and it's not even showing me
what it is
that's iffy. It seems
now, can you, just out of curiosity, can you just kick that guy, just error that, or delete that?
Sure. I say we delete it.
Now, the idea is you have no idea exactly what you deleted, but on the same token, if you were just using this as a reference, as a complete composite part assembly, hopefully it may not be critical.
Oh, whoops. Well, so that was unfortunate. I apparently just deleted the joined version. So what they did is they exported a fully joined model of it, and that isn't what we wanted. So we don't like this model. All right. So I'm going to Control Z that, and we'll get rid of the delete, and we'll just ignore that model. So point of all of this, when you go to import parts, there's a little bit of troubleshooting occasionally. And so this was a unplanned example of a part that didn't import terribly well. So, all right. Cool. So I'm going to ignore that part for now. So, but we do have our wheel. We have our composite version of this, and we have these two parts. Okay. And so we like these parts. We probably are going to use these again someday. Right. But we're in the middle of my, a lot of times when you're working with CAD things, you'll import stuff into your local file and use it right in the document that you're working on. But sometimes you want to go, oh, well, these are useful. Other people could use these, or I could use these later, and I'd like to be able to find them. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll create a library file. And so and it's an Onshape document. It has parts, studios, and assemblies, but you just sort of mentally designate that as a place to go find stuff. So if, and that is what Kevin lib is. And hopefully we have a Shri lib and a Rohan lib and an Arav lib. And I'm pretty sure Brian already has one. So if you've got that, what you can do is from the other file, I'm going back to the other tab now. You can actually find a nice little browser down that's called the tab manager down here in the far left-hand corner. Get rid of that. There we go. Far left-hand corner is this tab manager. And you can see all of the things that are in here. And I've decided that I would really like to have the part studio that's got these structural elements, and I'll just move both wheels. Why not? Okay. So I'd like to move those to a library file. So what you can do is as I was clicking on these things, I'm hitting the control key and I can multiple click, right? And so I've got 3 things clicked there. I can right click it, move to document, and you can see that these are the things that it's planning to move. And it will also move all of the references to these tabs, these referenced tabs there. So that's good. Usually what it defaults to is wonderful. And you can either from here create a brand new library, or you can click on other documents and you can go find the library that we already had. So I can go to my recently opened and hey, I've got Kevin lib. So if you click on other documents, recently opened, you should find the file that you created. And I can click on that. And then it's going to give me a target version number, which is fine. It'll create a version when it moves over. And then you just hit the move button and you'll find that once they're moved, there we go. So it's now moved them. You can see that my assembly in this file still has those parts in it. So the references don't change, but the actual location of the files moved. And if I come over here to Kevin lib, I now can see down here, I've got these tabs and you can see the things that are, there's our parts. And actually it even moved over the CAD imports of those files. It was pretty slick. So so that's kind of how, as you're building stuff and you realize, boy, I'd really like to use this in other CAD files or share this with other team members. That's how you move stuff into a library. Rohan and Arav, what do you think? Making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. There is a, if you want to find out more about this sort of stuff in the Learning Center, so I just clicked on the Learning Center tab. And this comes up. And if you go to all self-paced courses, and you can search for things like a document. And if I search for that, you'll find things having to do with documents and linked documents. That's kind of what we just did right there. And how to sort of navigate around with the moving of data. And they got all sorts of cool stuff. So if you want to learn more about it, or you're not exactly sure what the right thing to do, they do a pretty good job on it. So that's how to go find more help. All right. So let's now switch gears just slightly, and we are going to make a part in a part studio. And well, okay, so I started working on this earlier today, and I haven't actually gotten very far. I can get this other light turned on. It's hard to see a black thing. All right, so this was a webcam, right? It's the webcam. This Logitech webcam came in the control set. Okay, and I was thinking about, well, it's got one of these hinged things that sits on top of your monitor. Not terribly useful for sitting on top of a robot. So I started to take it apart, thinking, well, what I really want is just this camera part, right? You know, the camera and the cable. So what I did was I started to disassemble it, and it turned out there was a zoom in on it a little bit. So other way. All right. So there was this shaft that held it in. The camera's moving it backwards. Okay. So there was a shaft that was holding the camera. It pinned the camera to the mount. So I found that if I removed a couple of little plastic dots, I found a screw. This little screw right here. Little Phillips screw. So I unscrewed it, and then I used a screwdriver and I pushed the pin out, and that freed these two. Now, at first I thought, well, my original intent was to actually model this part here in an effort to like, well, that would be the simplest thing, because, and then maybe I could drill a hole or something in this. But once I got this apart, I thought, oh, well, I have a pretty nice 3D printer, so I really like to make a mount for it. So I need to interface to this thing and make a little mount for it. So let's do that real quick, and I'll show you some of the things that you can do with the Part Studio. So back to my shared document here, I'm just going to create a new Part Studio. Create Part Studio. There it is. And I can rename that Part Studio, by the way. Usually a handy thing to do is so I'm going to go with camera mount. Okay. And so I now have this this drawing thing here, and I could actually draw on it. So I could come in here, I could draw the squares, I could go take some measurements. So it's a 100% valid way of doing things is to come in here and figure out what the bolt pattern for this is, and transfer that bolt pattern over. So and that is something that you'll see very readily in the other tutorials. The other thing you could do is I could say, well, what I really want to do is I want to mount that camera right here on these dots, and I kind of like to be able to reference all of the other holes here. So there's another way to create a part, and that is to do up here. You can do something called a Create Part Studio in Context. Okay, and so if I click on this, it'll say select an origin or mate connector. And one possibility is just to grab the origin, and that works. And I can hit OK. And when I come into a Part Studio, it now has transferred a representation, a 3D representation of everything in that assembly. Okay, it's not, they're not technically there, but their dimensions and a representation of them are there. And so that's pretty handy, because now I can come down here and say, oh, well, I wanted something to bolt on right over this hole. Okay, so I can start a sketch, and I can start a sketch on top of this thing. And there we go. So I'm apparently sketching there. The purple things mean that they are considered context. They're not really there. So it's just trying to give you a hint about that. And we can go ahead and do like a center point rectangle. So up here, so now we're in a drawing mode, right? So there's all sorts of things we can draw, lines, circles and stuff along those lines. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw I want to draw a square right here on this part. Okay, so I'd like to use a center point rectangle. That means that it'll start with a center point, and I can use this thing as a center point. I don't know if you can see it, but it just highlighted with a little yellow square there. So there's the center of my rectangle, and I can just zoom it out like this. And I'd like it to be as wide as this part is. And I think it needs to be this same size. So I am Well, actually, I'm just going to draw it like this. And it looks like it needs to be 1.89 inches by 1.89 inches. Oh, stand by. I'll show you what I did wrong. I did something wrong just then. Okay, so that is absolutely not what I intended to do. So I'm going to do that one more time because I was thinking about what I was going to say next rather than what I was doing. All right, so I am going to grab this center point rectangle. I'm going to drag this out so that, and you can see I'm hovering over the edge line. So it's projected an edge line over here. If you can see it, and you can see that it, if I click there, and then I'm going to hit the escape button, you can see that this line turned black. And the reason that it turned black is it automatically inferred that I wanted to be part of that geometry right there. So that was cool. And this over here, it's also a parallel line to over here. So the edges are now fixed, and I should be able to do an equal between that line and this line, and it will be it doesn't look like it on the screen, but that actually is square. I don't know why it doesn't look like it on the screen. That's weird. Okay, no worries. So I made these equal. So I just drew a square and I just defined the size of the thing that I wanted, right? And notice I haven't put in any dimensions whatsoever. So now what I can do is I can say, oh, cool. The other thing I want to do is I would actually like to project. I will just use 4 holes. I'd like to project this hole right there, and this hole right there, and this hole, and this hole. And so those are now projected into my drawing. And there we go. I've now made a complete drawing that I should be able to extrude. So and I clicked OK. And if I do an extrude, I should be able to extrude that drawing. Oh, it gave me all the holes. All right, that is what I wanted. I don't often do it on something that has this many parts on it. Okay, well, anyway, say I wanted all of those holes. There you go. It has been dimensioned in size, and we didn't use any dimensions. It's just using all referenced parts. Sorry, I should have rehearsed that one before. So I just undid the extrude. I'm going to edit that sketch again. And I think that might have done it. Stand by 1 sec. Yep, okay. So what I forgot to do while I was sketching, there's a thing called imprinting. Imprinting automatically transfers all of the features into your drawing. So what you do is you do a disable imprinting. Now you know something new that would have taken you a while to figure out. What that does is that will not automatically transfer all of the holes. It'll only transfer the ones that I explicitly did what's called a projection on. Okay, so that's what I intended to do. Now I can do this, and I will make this 2 millimeters thick and hit OK. So now I've got this part that lines up with those holes. So that's pretty cool. Does that make sense? You guys want to try it?
Yes, actually, you know, I totally just forgot how you got to be able to start the drawing to begin with.
Sounds great.
How you got the ghost there to begin with.
All right, no worries. So I am going to actually cancel out of this, and I'll end up doing it again. So I'll run through it one more time. So I'm going to actually delete all of this. There we go. So going back to the assembly, I can, so there's a couple of different ways, by the way, of doing this. One is it always wants an origin or a mate connector. So before, the first time I did it with the origin,
Mhm.
and that's a valid way of doing it. Let this time, and so that would, and then when I hit the green check mark, it would have brought up the other window. Let's try it. Excuse me. This time, this allows us to put a mate connector. So I'm going to click this, and I'm going to go find this hole right here, and I'm going to establish that mate connector. And I can actually name the thing. I can edit its name, and I can call that the camera mount context. And that's the mate for that camera mount context. And if I hit the green check mark, you can see that thing now exists. And so I can actually do I can either select that mate or I can find it over here in the list. Okay. So this is just a slightly different way of doing it, and it will center your drawing on that spot. So that's what we're going to do this time. There we go. And so you can see that it has set the origin of this drawing to the center of that hole. And that can be super useful at times. So if you want to establish a drawing in context at a specific point so that you get the planes, these automatic planes exist, super useful. How are we doing? Has everybody got to that point? Did it make sense, Brian?
Yeah, it's just I'll have to go over it again just to verify. I'm stuck on a little problem getting stuff into my assembly, but you're miles ahead at light speed. However, you are touching on this origin, which is another thing to bring up later. I saw some FRC teams talking about multiple drawings specifically with origins involved. So,
Okay. Yeah, I can. I'll show you how that's done as well. Yeah, and multiple planes and stuff.
Yeah. It's I guess it was in references to bringing parts in and then assembling them with that origin in mind, so that you're actually assembling them according to the actual XYZ of the robot. And yeah, it was quite advanced. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it.
Yeah. Okay. So and so you can see in the drawing or in the part studio, you have access to the origin, the top, the front, and the right plane. Now these are planes. That's what these are. Yep. And so you can see them. And a plane is just a flat, and they allow you to orient yourself a little bit, and they're pretty handy. And that's what this orientation cube does. So if I could orient, I've now oriented myself to the top. All right, so once again, I'm going to do a sketch, and I would like to do that sketch on the, I can now do the sketch on the top plane, and you can see that it didn't automatically transfer everything over. Did you see that? So we're drawing on the top plane. Another option is, and by the way, if you screw up and you decide that isn't what you meant it to do, you can actually erase that, and then you can tell it to draw on a different plane. And there are the default planes, the sort of the design space, top, front, and right, and all flat surfaces are also planes. And that's what I did last time. Is I came down and I clicked on this plane, which is the top of the part, and when I do that, that is when you get the automatic, it's called an automatic projection or imprinting. And so now all of these things have been projected into my drawing. And you may not want that. And if you don't want that, then you can do a disable imprinting and all of that. And now those things shouldn't transfer over to your sketch automatically.
You have to select what you want from here, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to actually draw on the top plane this time. There we go. And if I click on the top, and now again, this origin of this drawing is the center point of that mate connector. So now I can do my center point guy like this, but notice that it isn't seeing the part back there. Remember how before I could click to that line? Okay.
Right.
So, so I'm actually now going to hit escape. I just wanted to show you that without the imprinting on or without those things, you have to actually manually bring them in. So I'm going to hit escape here real quick. So I've stopped that. I've stopped the drawing of that thing, and I'm going to use this guy. It's called project. So if I clicked on this little cube up here called project, I can tell it the things that I would like to use in my drawing. I would like to use this line. I would like to use this line. I would like to use this circle here, and this circle here, and this circle here, this circle here. So I've selected the 4 outside corner circles and those lines. And you can select, you can project all sorts of things. Those were circles. You can also project, lines or arc, or just, this isn't a circle. This would just be an arc, line arc there. Okay. In fact, here, I'm just for kicks, I'm going to project the big circle in the middle. Why not? Okay. So then I'm done with that. So I can come up here and click off of it. Okay. And then to orient myself, right? So you can see me rotating around here. That's me holding down the right mouse button and dragging around. I can always use the orientation cube up here in the upper right and click on top, and that will get me back to a top-down view. Okay. So now I've done that, I can do my center point rectangle, and I can go from here. Now, when I come out here, you can see how I'm highlighting that line when I go over it. And that is automatically inferring that it would like to have a relationship with that line. And so that's what I just did. And so there we go. And you can also see that it is, as I drag this thing around, it's inferring a number of different things. Right there, see that square? That's actually the midpoint of the side of this part. I had no idea that was there. I didn't really want to use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this out over here somewhere. So, but you need to watch out for those automatic things. And you can see as I drag this up, there's a little hint just to the lower right of my cursor. And that's telling me that it's going to make a perpendicular constraint between the line that I'm dragging and the side. And then if I here, it switched over to using a midpoint, right? Here, and you can get some unfortunate ones. You can get it'll try and infer what you're doing. So you have to kind of keep track of when you're drawing those little things from happening. So anyway, there we go. So now I've done that. And I'm going to use another thing. So these are shapes. This was that project thing. There's some other tools here. I'll talk about those in a sec. And then over here, these are called constraints. And this, instead of using numbers, you can actually define things by constraining them to be true, right? So you can make something to be coincident, which means they touch. There's another thing that's concentric, which means the center points of circles line up. You can do parallel, you can do tangent, you can do horizontal. What we're going to go for right now is something called equal. And what that does is if I click on equal and I say, I would like this line segment to be equal to this line segment, it'll oftentimes find whatever makes sense for that thing to be equal. And a line segment, the equality is usually its length. Okay. So now what we've just made a square, right? So that's what these constraints up here do. They're really sophisticated. They do some really impressive stuff. Shri.
Kevin, did you just click both those lines to cause the equal to sign to trigger?
I did. So I came up here, I clicked on equal. See how it turned blue?
Right.
Then I came down and I said, well, I would like this line,
So you clicked on it. Okay.
this line and this line to be the same length.
Right.
That makes a square.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
It's convenient.
Sound good? Now I also could have uh, I also could have figured out what the dimension is. So I could have dimensioned this line. Oh, whoop, sorry, I just dimension does all sorts of things. All right. So there is the dimension of that line. I'm in inches at the moment. These parts are in metric. Let me give you a really quick tip. If you want to change, you can change at any time. It automatically converts all your measurements. Go up here to where your file name is and this little menu, and you can change workspace units. And you can make these guys into millimeters instead. If you're using Go with millimeters, life's just easier. And if I do that, now when I do my dimensions, come back here, double click on this. Now you can see the dimension got changed to be 48. Now notice that this is gray. This is a very gray dimension. And it turns out it is called a driven dimension because the width is actually defined by my using the projected lines. That makes sense? I do another dimension here to here, and this one is editable. The driven one is not. Can't edit it. Okay. So here I can make this guy 48. Okay. How are we doing? Good? All right. So there we go. I'm now going to hit the green check mark. And I'm going to extrude, which means make that thick. And if I click on my drawing, I get that extrusion. I'm going to just make it 2 millimeters. And there we go. So we now have a 2 millimeter part. We have more to do on this part. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to now insert it in context. So see where it says insert and go to assembly up here? This little extra little window. I'm going to click on that and you can do the same. And it's going to ask me what part am I going to insert? And I want to insert part 1. Okay. And I can hit check mark and off we go. Pretty cool. Good. All right. So Groovy, it is not attached yet. So, so that means that we have to fasten it, right? And for today, we're just going to use a fastened mate. So that's this guy right here. Looks like a little bigger can. Fastened mate will join that puck or that mate guy there. So I'm going to click on that one. And then I'm going to zoom out a little bit and I'm going to right click and drag to roll up. And I'm going to zoom in on this guy a little bit. And I would like to do that one. When I do that, it moved it. And I can roll it back up. And that looks good. That's what I wanted. I'll just hit the green check mark. So now that is now fastened in place. Now remember, fastened means that those two things are joined and it doesn't allow movement in any of the directions. So this guy is now fixed in place. Okay. Now, the cool thing about this in context thing is, you notice I did end up putting some numbers in. I didn't really have to put in any numbers at all, right? And if the other part that it's attached to grew in shape or changed shapes or whatever, this part would just track it. It would track each of those referenced things. Okay. Now, I now have this part. That little arrow right there says that this part has a context. And the context is actually named context 1, but that's telling you that it's been drawn in context of something else. So if I right click on this guy, and you can see I can edit in context. And that would allow me to go back to that previous state. So if I edit in context of context 1, you can name the context. We'll get to that in a sec. And you can see it reopens it with that part back just the way you had it. Okay. Make sense?
And along those lines, if you want to get rid of that shadow now, you have your part. You don't need this. We're going to use that part for something else. You can, I assume you disconnect it and ditch the shadow and then export your part to some other, move it to some other drawing.
Yeah, and usually what you would do is you would come up here. And so when something's being done in context and it has actually been inserted, the next time you edit it, you can see assembly contexts. This little window shows up over above your features. And one of the things you can do is you can delete the context. Also, if for whatever reason you change something over here, so let me go do that. I'm just, you don't need to follow this. I'm just going to, this is just an example. I'm going to insert a bolt over here. Okay. So there's a bolt. If I go back to that part, you can see the bolt isn't there. So I may have made other changes, right? So the context is sort of with the drawing. And if you've moved things or you've added things, you can actually update the context. And when it does that, we should end up seeing a bolt show up here in just a sec. There it is. So there the bolt showed up, right? And I can decide to delete the context. And if I do that, context, all that stuff has gone away.
No, I see.
Right?
Yeah.
Cool. And now if I go back to the assembly, you'll notice that I lost the arrow. And actually, if I right click on this, okay, edit in context is still there. Yeah. All right. So yes. Now I can edit in context. So if I decide I want to edit in context again, I can click on this and it will bring it back, but the context is actually broken. All of the context references are broken. So I don't know why it still shows it. I mean, it knows that it lost the context. I don't know why it allows us to edit context anymore. A weirdness. We'll ignore it a little bit.
So once you lose the context, you cannot get it back, can you?
Not easily. Well, actually, you can. So I should be able to switch to part, and then can I set a context? It is possible. And I do not do it often enough for me to be able to tell you exactly how to do it. But if you look in the Learning Center, they talk about how this context stuff works.
Okay.
Good.
So, and I believe there's a way to do that. I do use this occasionally, especially if I have a complicated, if I had to make a complicated part that went across multiple parts in an assembly and I needed all the holes to line up, like a gusset plate or something like that.
Right.
I'll do it in context. And then I usually try not to get, I have not gotten too tricky with the context. Okay. All right. So back to our planes here real quick. I'm just looking at how much time we have left, and can I make good enough progress on that? Probably not. So I'll finish up with what I did want to show off at the end, which was sometimes so we inserted a bolt over here. And so this, and especially if you're using Go Builder, this can show up more often than not. And it actually shows up on a lot of things. The standard way of doing this is to do a insert standard content. And the slick way is to click on a hole that you like. In fact, you can click on a whole bunch of holes. Whoops, that isn't the one I wanted. So I'm going to shift click that. There we go. So there, I just clicked on 4 holes, and I'll click on these holes too, right? Whoop. Here, we'll put these guys in. All right, so there. So now I bolted my thing on, right? And that's a slick way to do it. But when you want to actually use one of these slotted holes, things get a little trickier. And I just wanted to show you, because this I had to show this to a number of students in the past couple of days from my team because they're using this stuff. Sometimes what you can do is you actually don't highlight anything, and you can actually insert, and it will give you a screw, right? And you can actually insert multiples of these. Okay, so there's 3 of them, and I can actually hit OK, right? So if I wanted to put the bolt in this slot, the question is, how do you do that? Well, it turns out that most of the standard content comes with something called a default mate, and you can see it here. That little mate puck. It's there, and it's sort of it's there to be used, right? So that's its default mate. So what you can do is you can actually do a like a revolute mate, and I can pick that. I can pick that puck there, okay, and then I can go find one of these slotted things, and I can line it up where I want it, because the hole doesn't work, right? In the other thing, but you can still insert screws using that mate. And then you would come down here and you say, well, I think it's going to be in the center, or you can move to the right or the left, depending on what you need to do. And you can click there, and it will do exactly what you thought it was going to do. And so that's how you use the nuts and the bolts in a non-round thing. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then if I wanted to put a nut on the back of this, you kind of need to do kind of the same thing. You insert, and we'll go find a nut, and we're going to use a prevailing torque nut. And it turns out that I can't actually select where I want it to be. That's all right. So what I'll do is I will just do an insert, and I'll just put it right here, and I'll close this, and I can manually go back and pick that puck. And I want to pick that puck. And I don't know if everybody had seen this before, but this is an example of the axis needing to be inverted because my nut is on the inside. I didn't want that, so I can hit the flip primary axis, and now my nut is where it's supposed to be, and I can hit solve. So that is how we put basically a nylock on a non-round hole.
Where was that flip primary axis?
Okay, great question. Let's do that. I'm going
that.
to edit this guy. It's this arrow.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah.
That's like extrusion one way or the other kind of a thing, right?
Exactly right. Exactly
okay.
right. And now, I'll highlight this again. We saw it last night, but a lot of people kind of missed it. You can see pretty clearly in this nut, Z-axis points up, the X-axis is to the left, and the Y-axis is to the right.
Mhm.
I could also, so the Z-axis is always the primary axis in general. It's almost always the primary axis. The other axes, these two, can actually be rotated. And so if I reorient this secondary axis, so watch what happens to X and Y when I click on this. See how it shifted? It's now pointed this way and that way.
Yeah.
And shifted this way and that way. So that's really useful, especially if you have a square part that you're trying to get aligned and it just didn't do what you wanted. So it always moves in 90-degree increments. And so that's a useful thing. The other interesting thing, if you ever want to deal with it, is animate the mate's degree of freedom. This can be kind of handy sometimes when you're not exactly sure what that mate's going to do. If you push this button, it will show you that a revolute mate will allow you to rotate around an axis, right? And it turns out if we had actually made this into a cylindrical mate, it would allow you to see that it goes up and down as well, right? So this is kind of useful when you're not exactly sure what that mate is actually going to do, or if it's not doing you one and you wanted to test out what the other ones do. So I think that's relatively useful. Like a slider, for example, it only goes up and down. Notice that thing is not rotating. So that's a slider mate, and a cylindrical mate can both slide and rotate. And you can see that's what they're trying to show you up here. A cylindrical mate can slide up and down the z-axis and rotate, whereas a slider mate only moves along the z-axis. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Pretty handy. Sometimes it will, especially if you're mating an assembly, it'll only bring the one part over that you were mating. And if there were more parts to it, you may want to do something slightly different. So I'm going to show you that real quick. Let's say, for example, I want to mate, I'm going to do a rotation mate, and I'm going to do that hole, and I'm going to do that hole. Okay, so what it did is it just oh, well, this one brought everything along. Okay, sometimes it doesn't look right. And sometimes it didn't drag everything along with it. And if you hit the solve button, what it'll do is it will resolve the thing and it'll get everything back into its position. I think one level of assembly will come over in its entirety, but if you had multiples, you sometimes end up with a rogue part moving around. So anyway, that's what solve does. Solve will completely finish the movement of everything, so that you can look to see if it did what you wanted. Okay. Also note that this little box here, this only shows up when you're actually creating a mate. It doesn't show up when you're editing a mate. The controls are there. Flip primary axis and reorient secondary axis are in this little window, and solve is in the little window, but the play button is not. So if you're looking to use the play button, you actually have to edit an existing relationship. Hopefully that made some sense. Okay, and I just undid that. All right. So and again, there's an entire section in the Learning Center that you can go find about assembly mates. Okay. And almost all of these are good lessons. If you haven't done any of these, honestly, I think I would do assembly mates as your first one because it's super, super useful. One last thing that that came up while I was working with my students was they wanted to cut this off. They want to modify one of these parts. They wanted to make it shorter. There are actually a couple different ways of doing that. The most straightforward and accurate way to do it is the following. What you want to do is I told them, well, you'd like to start with this part, but make your own new part, right? Because you don't want it to go changing all of the parts in your library. So what you don't want to do is open this thing. You could open this thing and edit it. I could do a open linked document, and notice where that document is. It's in my library file. You don't want to do that, because if you change this, every instance of it will get changed, even though you're just trying to cut it off, right? So that isn't really what you want to do. So I'm going to close this, or I'll just leave it there. Okay, so what I really would like to do is I'd like to make what's called a derived part. So I'll create a new part studio or use an existing one. Here's one. So here's a part studio. And it turns out that if you grope around up here on this bar, you will find this little box here, and it's called derived. And this is how you take an existing part to modify it for your special instance, right? So what you can do, so you do a derived, and it will allow you to insert a part. So you can go to other documents, and I can go to my Kevin lib. And so you can see that it's the same sort of browser as inserting something. It just has current document and other documents. It doesn't have standard content, right? And so I can go and I'm going to grab one of these guys. And lo and behold, there it is. So that is the part. Now it's a derived part, which means that if this part changes in the library for whatever reason, those changes will filter through this part. Does that make sense? And so if somebody modifies the library part in a good way, yay, you get changes. If somebody modifies it in a bad way, well, you get their changes too. Okay. So now what we can do is I can take this guy and I can do all sorts of things to it, including I can split it. I can transform, warp it, do all sorts of things. I can actually sketch on it. So just for giggles, we're going to sketch on this plane, and let's decide that we really want to just have one more hole right there. Okay, so there's the hole, and I'm going to cut this hole. And I'm going to make it go through all of the parts. So you can see here, I'm sorry, what I did is I drew a circle. I'm doing an extrude remove that instead of adding to it, I'm going to subtract from it. And I've told it instead of being a blind hole, I'm going to go through all. And I'm going to click on that. Okay. And it will go through and see it went all the way through. And there we go. So I now have this new part, and I can rename this part, and I should rename this part. This is a modified channel. Okay, there we go. So now if I go to my assembly, I can insert from my current document in that part studio a modified channel. Okay, and I'll just click it right there, and you can see it has that extra hole. Right. So that's how you take an existing library part and do that. Now, another thing I could do, I can go back and edit this guy, and it turns out that you can actually do something called a thicken. Thicken is kind of interesting. I can come over here and grab the end of this part, and I can invert the direction, and I can remove 24 millimeters from this part. Okay, and that is actually the correct dimension if you're using GoBuild to shorten something up. And I can do that. Okay, so now I've taken that stock library part and cut off 24 millimeters off the end to make it shorter. And if I jump back over to my assembly down here, I'm going to here I go. I'm jumping back to assembly. You can see that part updates. Okay, and it didn't modify those original parts. So that's how you take an existing thing and modify it. And if your kids are assembling things and realizing that they're going to cut something off, that's how you cut it off.
And this derived part, is this now in the library?
This is no, it's not in the library.
Okay.
It is actually in my working file. So it's in Part Studio 1. So yeah, so it's now local to this. I could move this into the library if I'd like to, right? But this is how you take a library part, make a modification for your local thing. Sound good?
Yep.
And to this part, you can do all sorts of things. You can change its material, its color, do whatever you basically do whatever you want to it. And you can see it's just like any other part. It's just it has it starts with a derivation first, and So I can roll this back and roll it forward just like any of the other part drawings. Useful? Okay.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah,
the,
very.
the details of how to do all of the sketching and stuff are really, like I've said before, are best done out of the Learning Center. They do a much better job, and you can play with it as you go along. But sometimes it's hard to find the useful things. This one is especially useful. Very, very especially useful, especially if you have a library. For example, just to show you, if I, by the way, you can have multiple parts in a parts studio. Don't know if you knew that. The thing is that when you derive something, it's going to use the same origin for it. I don't know how to derive something off of a different origin. I think there's a way to move the origin as you go down the thing, but I haven't figured that out yet. Somebody may have to do that. So anyway, in other documents, it turns out that I have a library file called a part factory. It has all kinds of stuff in it that my team has been using for over the years. And so I can insert we have a thing called a timing belt studio. And so I can say, oh, I want an 18-tooth timing belt for that size belt with a 3/8 hex bore, whatever other things. I can generate that. And I can insert it. There we go. So there's the part. And so now I can, we're sharing the origin. So that makes it kind of a pain here. One good trick is to just take this guy and hide it. There we go. So now I can work on this guy. And again, I can modify this part, and I can click on this fellow. And so I'm doing a sketch on that face, on that plane. And I'm just going to put a little hole here because I need a little hole there, right? Okay, perfect. I'm going to extrude that little hole, remove through all, and there. So now my my timing pulley has that little hole in it. So I can still, however, go back to my derived part and do something called, well, I can edit this part and I can change the parameters. I might decide that it really wanted to be a 24-tooth belt and with a 7mm hex. I can generate that, okay? And I can hit okay. And you can see my change is still there, even though the base part, I can go back and change the base part. Did that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And holding on to the, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No, go ahead.
So the exact location of that hole, how did it hold on to that with respect to the previous dimensions?
I was going to ask the same thing. Was it referenced off of the center of the hex?
It was all of these things have a reference off of the origin. So they have an XYZ coordinate off the origin. Yeah, you're right, because what I really should have done on this sketch is like given it a place. In fact, some of the other, so we were talking about context or about constraints, right? So you know, an obvious constraint to use here would be, well, I'd really like to make sure that this is always horizontal to the origin. So there we go. And then I can also put a dimension between the origin and this thing, right? So I always want it to be 10mm away. There we go. And of course, I didn't really dimension the hole itself. So let's make it a 4mm hole. So now see how it based on that last transaction, see how it's blue right there? If something in a drawing is blue, it is not fully constrained. It can either move or be resized or something unconstrained about it. When you actually fully constrain something, meaning its position is fixed, it must always be horizontal to this, It must be 10 millimeters between centers. And I've now given it a dimension of 4 millimeters. Now you see it turned black. It's not, you can't move it, you can't drag it. To resize it, you have to edit those numbers. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. Yeah. So this whole derived thing, super useful, and especially for those who are planning on cutting or modifying the standard parts. Now, the other thing you'll want to do is if I go over to assembly 1 here, and I go to do an insert, and I look in Part Studio 1, you can see modify channel is still there. So that's good. So I can enter another one of those. But if I go back to the Part Studio, it's hiding. And I can tell it's hidden because this guy is very, very grayed out, and the eyeball has a slash through it. Whereas the timing pulley, it's got an eyeball. So that, and so you can hide, unhide using that eyeball right there.
Yeah.
If you have something that has a ton of things in it, like this has got a whole bunch of stuff, and I really, really would like to just see one thing, I can decide that I really just want to see only this bolt. You can right click this guy and do an isolate. An isolate will turn everything else mostly transparent. Okay. And actually, I think you can also hide the transparent parts if you want. Cool.
Yeah.
And then to turn that off, you just you unisolate with this. You can also expand connectivity. Well, anyway, you can highlight multiple things and isolate them. And then the one last thing I'll show you is sometimes when you're trying to mate things, you get a lot of obstacles in your way. For example, see these mate connectors, these little pucks, they become a nuisance after a while. So what you can do is if you hover over one, over the part that has it, right click, and you can say hide all mate connectors, and that will get rid of them all. Yay. And let's say that I really would like to get access to the holes that are behind here, but I can't get at them. There's another little control that is over here on the right side that allows you to, so we're currently in shaded. You can turn on shaded without, or shaded without edges. Shaded, see, when you're shaded, see the edges are highlighted a little bit black. Without edges turns off the black. With hidden edges turns on all of the features you can't actually see from your current view. So now I've got access to these holes back here, right? So if I was trying to do something with that hole, but I couldn't get at it, you can do that. You can turn on the hidden edges. Another one is you can actually go translucent. And so a translucent view will show you all of the details that are hiding under there. And again, it's just a tactic if you're trying to get access to something that is, because you've assembled things and it's hiding on you. This little view cube over here on the right-hand side gives you all kinds of very nice little tools that can help you find those things that you're looking for. Here it is with not shaded with hidden. So yeah, shaded, not shaded. So here it is with it's not shaded, right? And it just depends on what you need. These are new down here. I don't actually know what they are, so I'm going to try it. Curvature visualization. Oh, interesting. It's trying to show a interference pattern. I'm sure there's a good use for that. What it is, I don't know. But you can see it's showing, it allows the interference pattern allows you to see where curves are. Interesting. I don't know what that's used for. I first time I've seen it. Interference detection.
I would think that it's just to help you differentiate between like the bevel on the bolt heads
Yeah.
and the columns and stuff to be able to distinguish those details.
Yeah, yeah, cool. I don't recall seeing that before. It may have always been there and I just have never seen it. All right. Anyway, cool things that you can do over there. And I usually leave it in shaded. It just is my default way of working. And the other, there's a couple of other things up here. You can get default views like an isometric view, which is the same as looking from this corner, right? And you can do a diametric view, which is a little bit different. And my dad once taught me the difference between those two. I believe one of them preserves 90-degree edges or something like that. Okay, I don't remember exactly what that means. Diametric, trimetric, and isometric. I will have to look those up. They're drafting terms I don't remember. And then if you've gotten yourself way zoomed in, or you've managed to lose, if you've managed to pan and you have no idea where your stuff is, this happens a lot. One of the things that can save you is to come up to this little cube, and you can do a zoom to fit, and it will bring everything back so you can see everything. So that's really useful. Or if you decide that you would really like to just zoom into a window, you can do that, zoom into window. It's all under there, and you can pick the thing you want to look at. So there's different ways of moving around here. And turn perspective on. Oh, right. You if you want to get some really funky views, perspective view allows you to see it as if your eyeball was right up there, right? And so you get the vanishing points. Usually when you're doing CAD modeling, this is not a terribly useful view to use, but it could be if it floats your boat. So we will just go with turn perspective off. There we go. And there it's trying to, because the funny thing with perspective on is that parallelism gets funky. Like these two lines should be parallel, but they're not in perspective view, especially when you get way zoomed in. And things stop being right angles all the time. So that's why you usually do drafting with perspective turned off. All right. Sweet. Hey, I'm sorry I ran over. I hope it was okay for you guys.
Oh, definitely fine. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Last night was garbage date night. So we got our garbage down to the road and picked up the cans. And tonight is go to the store night because it turns out we don't have any food in the house. So, all right, friends, thank you all for attending. What do you, if you get a chance, play around with some of the tutorial stuff. So our basic review for the day was, try to import into a single part studio unless you have a really good reason not to. If you're getting too many parts out of the thing, you may have to turn composite on. Okay. If you do download a solid part, always do the materials, always do the color. We learned a little bit about drawing in context. We spent a little time about how to insert a screw into a slotted hole. We messed around with taking a part studio, inserting a part from another library or something that you downloaded, and modifying it in there. And that's called a derived part. And that is done in a part studio. You will not find derived parts in an assembly. So derived parts, you create a part studio and do the derivation there, make any changes you want. And then if you're trying to get access to things, to various holes, that little view cube over there on the right-hand side is really useful. Next time, I'd like to be able to show you how to use parameters and variables. And if you get ahead of me and you want to do it, great. Otherwise, what I mean by that is, what's the best way to show it? Oh, I know the best way to show it. You can actually have parts that are configurable, or and oftentimes if you're trying to make library parts, that's actually quite a useful thing. So we have this thing called a part factory. This is where I put all of my things, but I'll just load one of these up. There we go. When you actually look at the drawing for this, you can see there's a whole bunch of variables in here that are used in the drawing and defined in the drawing. And I can change variables up here. Let's go with 14. And that will automatically change the drawing. It changes a whole bunch of stuff. And it can be really super useful if you're trying to build reusable parts or things that you need to make slight modifications to, but you don't want to have a bazillion of them, right? And it can also help you come up with standard configurations for things. For example, this belt size, all of these belt sizes exist in a table over here in the configuration panel. So here are all the belt sizes. And so I have a whole wide range of variables that are set based on the belt size. And all of those variables are used in the various sketches and stuff. So I'll run through just a sample of how you can make that work for you. And so I think that is sort of my plan for next time. It turns out that teams find this extremely useful, especially if you're defining your own parts and stuff. Okay.
Oh, great. Kevin, how many more of these sessions do you have planned? I didn't notice.
Oh, well, they run until December. I'm eventually expecting people to start showing up and asking, I can't get this to work, help, right?
Yeah.
And so if you end up with those, I'm all 2 thumbs up.
Okay.
Those are the best ways to watch, because everybody gets stuck on the same stuff.
Yep.
And yeah. Otherwise, I love CAD. I love doing this CAD program, and so I can carry on about this for days.
And you will, right? You will be doing this, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Excellent.
And so far, aside from the specific parts we downloaded, everything we've done so far applies to pretty much anything you do, FRC, FTC, or any other things that you end up doing. Also, next time, so I'll show you the fact. Actually, what we'll do is we'll do a camera mount for this little camera next time. And we'll make it so that we can configure it, whether it goes on GoBuilda or Rev Robotics or something else, right? So maybe we'll pick 2 or 3, and I'll show you how you can automatically resize a part like that, right? Because a camera mount like this is generically useful because you're able to hang on to this, and maybe you actually want to put this on your FRC robot. So maybe we can make it attached to 80/20 or something like that. And I'll show you how we can use those variables to reconfigure that. So there's a plan for next time. Do you want to do that on Tuesday or Wednesday? Anybody care?
I'll be working, and I'll probably be listening. I'll be on job site at that time, but so
Okay.
I'll just,
That's great. And I recorded this, so we'll put it up on the net.
Excellent.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much for your time, Kevin.
Bye.
See you. Bye.